The Romans uprooted the vines and took them to Italy. For nearly 2,000 years, no vineyards existed on these mountains.
It's not that we changed the land, it's not that we brought a new soil or something like that. The land really came back to herself. It's like a dead man that came back to life.
Hi, I'm Wendell, and you're at street level. I'm here in my backyard in Texas, and it's Shevat. It's known as the Holiday of Trees. Leviticus 27:30. And all the tithe of the land, whether from the seed of the land or the fruit of the trees, belongs to the Lord, for it is holy to the Lord. It's kind of like a tithe of the fruit. It's a full moon right now. So this was the exact time of the year, on the 15th of the 11th month, when all the trees would be counted and all the fruit would be calculated, so they would know just exactly how much of a tithe that they would bring to the temple and give to the Levitical priest. It's kind of like the holiday of the tree. Some would consider it to be the birthday of trees or the new year of the trees. And so it was at this moment that the trees would be considered to be born. And then every single Tu B'Shavat, I will know exactly when to calculate the beginning of the year for the age of that tree. There are generally 4 different kinds of New Year's. There's a New Year in Nisan, which is for kings and festivals. It's also what's known as Pesach. And on Tu B'Shavat, it's a full moon. So we're 2 full moons or 2 months away from that barley harvest. There's also a New Year in the month of Elul, which is the New Year for cattle. There's also a New Year in Tishrei, which is the 7th month. And it's the New Year of years. This is where you have all the different festivals that converge all the time, and cycles of time and days and months and years, and all these cycles cycle into this one day. And that's going to be sabbaticals. It's going to be Shemitahs and Yovels and Jubilees. It's the New Year of years, the year of years. And then the other appointed time is the New Year in Shevat, which is the 4th one, which is the 11th month. And that's what this is. So it's the New Year of trees. It's for planting trees and determining the age of trees, and for calculating and measuring the tithe that's given back to the service of the sanctuary. Every Tu B'Shavat is a year. It's like a birthday year. It's actually how you measure and calculate and determine the exact age of the tree. So when you come into the land and have planted all kinds of trees for food, you are to consider their fruit as forbidden. 3 years it will be forbidden to you. It is not to be eaten. And then in the 4th year, all of its fruit will be holy, for giving praise to the Lord. And in the 5th year, you may eat of its fruit. So it will yield its increase to you. I am the Lord, your God. We know that that land that God was going to put his name, we know that we're talking about the nation of Israel, the land of Israel, the promised land. So the command here in Leviticus 19 is that you plant the tree for 3 years. You are not to eat of the fruit of it. You let it establish, let it grow and mature. And then the 4th year, when the fruit is ripe and it bears fruit, it is to be holy to the Lord. All the fruit is to be actually brought in to Jerusalem, to the temple, where God has placed his name, and to be given to the ministers of the sanctuary, the Levitical priests. And then on the 5th year, all the fruit is yours. You can eat, but obviously you tithe the 10th of that every year. So that's actually how you calculate the years. Just planted this, so this will be 1 year. So for 3 years, forbidden. 4th year is to be all for ministry, to service the sanctuary, and on the 5th year, it's ours to eat. Many layers of spiritual meaning to this. Some would say that this actually points to the ministry of Messiah when he was here on the earth. 3 years, as in 3 days, not to be touched and not to be partaken of. And when Jesus was resurrected on the 3rd day, Mary met him. He says, "Don't touch me, for I haven't ascended to my Father yet." So his fruit wasn't fully ready to be given to the whole world. So this holiday of Tu B'Shavat is not just one. It's just like a fruit tax to where farmers would calculate their tithe or two, and not just be able to determine when the fruit is ready and how old the tree is, how established it is. But three, it's also kind of like an ecological significance in Israel. It's kind of like a Jewish Earth Day. It's become traditional as a celebration every year for Jewish people or the land of Judea or in Israel to plant a tree on this holiday.
Celebration. All over Israel, trees will be planted with the intent of restoring and beautifying the land of Israel.
When you plant a tree, it takes many years for the roots to be established. They say that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time to plant a tree is today. This is a plum tree I planted in my backyard. I'm not in Israel, but it is a mitzvah, a command to plant a tree on this day. You don't have to plant a tree, but if you do plant a tree in Israel, it will bear much fruit. And they returned to the land of the Philistines. And then he, Abraham, planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and he called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. He lived as an outsider in the land of the Philistines many days. So we do see that Abraham, although he was called and chosen, and he was told to leave his home and everything that he knew and loved and go to the land that God would show him, he walked the land, and God says, all of this I will give it to your descendants, not to you, but to your descendants. And so even though Abraham was a sojourner, he didn't live in the land, he didn't settle and dwell in the land. He only settled as a journeyman, as a sojourner in the land. He pitched tents and didn't build houses. He did dig a well, but he didn't build houses. Planting a tamarisk tree in the land of promise, in the covenantal land, Abraham was revealing that he was investing in his future. He was investing in his descendants' prosperity. And he wouldn't benefit from the tree, only his descendants would. Abraham was a businessman. He ran trade routes on the King's Highway through the Middle East, or the Near East, excuse me. And people that were on journeys from Africa and Europe and Asia and the Middle East, they would actually stop and they would pay him money to be able to water their camels and to be able to rest. It was like a rest area, like a rest stop. He did do business in the land, and he ended up buying the field, the cave in the field of Machpelah, which he used as a burial place for all the patriarchs and matriarchs of the Bible. But he never actually settled in the land. It's one of the rules of owning land, is the only way that you can establish and ascertain ownership of the land is if you make an improvement on it. You dig a well, you build a house or a structure, you change something, you move dirt around, or you plant a tree. That is what makes ownership a legal reality. The people, God's people, living on God's land together in harmony with following the Torah is actually the covenant that God made with Abraham. And so, Tu B'Shavat, it does symbolize planting a tree in the land of Israel. Very, very, very important to fulfill the mitzvot, the command in the covenantal land. A great man who wrote this book, his name is David Friedman. He's a former U.S. ambassador to Israel. And this book is One Jewish State. But in his book, he recently published and released his book about half a year ago. I met him in New York City, but in this book, he does say that as an ambassador and a dignitary and an important person, he's met many, many important people around the world and in history, and he's received many gifts. And when he was in his office in the embassy, which used to be in Tel Aviv at the time, before Trump moved it to Jerusalem, he was in his office, and there was a command in the Torah that said, you know, at every year, the shepherds shall shear their sheep and give it to the Levitical priests. So anyways, there were actually shepherds in the land of Israel, modern day Israel, that had sheep, and they went to shear their sheep, and they took all of the wool, and they don't have a temple, so there's no way of taking it to the temple or giving it to the Levitical priest. So what they decided to do, and David Friedman is a descendant of Levi, and so what they decided to do was to weave it into a garment, into a talit, into a Jewish prayer shawl, a talit, and they actually made a beautiful handmade talit, and they went to his office in Tel Aviv, and they actually handed it to him, and they said, "Sir, there's a mitzvot, a command to give our wool to the Levites." So they said, "Here, we're presenting you this with this gift." And this was in the actual eternal biblical land of Israel. So David Friedman said, although he had been a very important person, met very many important people in his life, and had received many, many very expensive and luxurious gifts, he said that talit was the most valuable and important and meaningful gift he's ever received in his life, because it was actually fulfilling a command in the actual land of Israel. Zionism is a concept of Jews coming back to the land. Jews apart from their land, they're living in exile. The Jews, the house of Judah, living on the eternal promised land, that is actually living according to Torah, that is living in the covenant. Zionism is central to Judaism. Without the people living on the land will not thrive. When the Jewish people are not living on the land and it's being illegally occupied by people other than the covenantal people of Abraham, then the land fails to thrive. It's a desert wasteland where nothing thrives. It's a land of salt pits and ruins. 100 years ago, the land of Israel was a desert, and nothing thrived there. Nothing grew there. Nobody could barely even live there. But today, because the Jews live there and they follow the commands of the Lord, and the land is being managed by the instructions of the holy canon of ancient scriptures in the Torah, the land thrives, and the land sustains and feeds and makes the people great and strong. Starting in the late 1800s, Jews started coming back into the land and occupying the land of Israel. Before it was even Israel, it was just the land of Judah at the time, and they started planting trees, fulfilling the mitzvot, or the command to plant trees on the day of trees. And since the late 1800s to today, there has been 25 million fruit-bearing trees planted in the land of Israel, which is what turned it from a desert wasteland and into one of the most thriving agricultural, superior economies in the world. Fruit from Israel, whether it be oranges or pomegranates or plums or pears, is one of the most beautiful and thriving fruits in all of the world. Every year at a certain time, we go down to the store here in Texas and we buy oranges that are actually imported from the land of Israel. And these are the most delicious, juiciest, sweetest, and best tasting oranges that you could find in the world. When and only when the Jews are living in the eternal land, the covenantal land, or the holy land, will the land thrive. And I'll tell you why. Genesis chapter 12. And now the Lord had said unto Abraham, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, to the land that I will shew thee. And I will make thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. This is the deed to the land. So to say that the Jews living in Israel is an illegal occupation is to actually tell God that he's wrong, to tell him that he was wrong to choose these people and to give these people his land. Who is going to stand before the living God and tell him that his covenant with Abraham is illegal? Any other people occupying in that land is an illegal occupation, and I'll say why. Because God is making a covenant with Abraham's descendants And he not only gives them the land, he gives them his word. He gives them the instructions on how to live in that land. And it's no small coincidence. It's actually no coincidence at all. Parsha, this time of the year, during Tu B'Shavat, is actually the Mishpatim. After God brings the people to Mount Sinai and he makes a covenant with them and speaks his 10 commands, his 10 words. The Mishpatim is Moses writing down the holy covenant, God's instructions on how to live as a holy people, to live as free people, and to live on the land, a land that flourishes and blossoms. What happens when you live according to this on the land? You get blessings. You get prosperity. When people live in the Holy Land and don't live according to this is what happens. You get death and war and destruction. You get oppression and you get suffering and servitude and you get complete desolation. God doesn't judge the outward appearance. He only judges and sees what's inside, inside the heart. It's the courage and the character. Jesus, when he was on the way to the temple, he saw a beautiful fig tree with big, huge, beautiful leaves, and it looked like it would have had fruit on it. But as he walked up to it, he was hungry, and he realized there was no fruit on it. And he cursed the tree. And the next day, when they came back with the disciples remembered him cursing the tree, and they saw that the tree was completely withered and dead. And the fruit is not for our benefit, it's for others' benefits. Judging the world from its outward appearance can lead to hunger and starvation. It can lead to a lot of misery and failure and destruction and death. One of the great moral and biblical lessons that we can take away from this is, what Jesus Christ or Yeshua HaMashiach taught. You will know them by their fruits. In other words, you may see a tree from a distance and it looks beautiful and it looks fruit-bearing, but as you walk and as you draw closer and you get a better look and inspect it a little bit more closely, you'll actually discover and notice that the tree does not bear fruit. We hear very attractive doctrines. We see beautiful women. There's a lot of things in this world. From the outward appearance, they look right. They look good. In our eyes, we judge the world according to what we see, according to our perspective, according to what we believe. We see the world through the lens of what we want. We need to look at the world based off of what the Word of God says, what God tells us is good and just and right and appropriate and acceptable. And that's how we should judge the world. So this bears in reason with why Abraham would plant a tamarisk tree. He wasn't looking to benefit from it himself, and not in the immediate, but he was looking forward to the future and blessing his descendants. All the nations of the earth would be blessed through Abraham's seed, through his descendant, who gave us this. This is a tree of life Bible, the tree of life Bible. So trees are very symbolic and important in the Bible. Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in the Lord. For he will be like a tree planted by the waters, spreading out its root by a stream. It has no fear when heat comes, but its leaves will always be green. It does not worry in a year of drought, nor depart from bearing fruit. That's right. If you build your life on this, if you send your roots out to receive the eternal living water, the Word of God, then your life will always be secure, even in times of great trouble and stress and difficulties. So the people living on the land, according to this, is God's covenant. No other way, apart from this, from these instructions, from this revelation, from this light, and from this Torah, no other way will work.
I have told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart, because I have overcome the world.